Hey everyone, so today I am going to be pitting these two guys against each other, and this is of course the Beauty Blender, the original Beauty Blender, and this is the Inglot Pro Blending Sponge. Now I'm going to start off with the packaging and that, and then I'll run you through the application and let you know how each one did against the other, say. So of course the Beauty Blender comes in this little cylindrical packaging. It can come with a little soap at the bottom that fills the bottom, but this one just came as it is, and this is very handy if you want to you know, sit your Beauty Blender on top. It works as a nice little cup. Then when it comes to the Inglot one, it comes in a square, also plastic but square packaging with a open up lid, so it doesn't have the lid that comes off the top like the Beauty Blender one. And the box of the Inglot one is bigger than the Beauty Blender one. So the Beauty Blender does in general take up less space. When you look at the two sponges themselves, the Beauty Blender is smaller than the Inglot one. It's not like massively smaller, but there is a bit of a difference. I think that when the Beauty Blender is expanded, it's closer in size to how the Pro Blender by Inglot is without having expanded from water. And then of course when you wet both of them get way bigger. And yeah, so here they are dry beside each other, and you can see definitely that the Beauty Blender is the smaller size. And apologies for these looking like cartoon boobs when you put them like this, but it just gives you an idea of the size. And then here they are when they're wet, so they're just bigger again, but they're still relative when they're wet, so they seem to get to the same size, if you know what I mean. Now, one thing that was a little alarming when I wet the Inglot one is that, and this was my first time using it, by the way, I should have mentioned that this was my first time using the Inglot one in this video, but the this guy here, it had suds in it, which is definitely a little bit alarming. I wet it, I let it get really wet like I would with the Beauty Blender, and then when I was just squeezing it out a little bit to almost draw in more water, loads of suds came out. So that was very weird, and I'm not sure what the story with that is because it was my first use. I bought it direct from the store, so I'm not really sure what that's about. All that said and done, we'll go into the actual application, and then you can see how I feel about the use of each sponge. So I'm going to apply my foundation with the Beauty Blender on the left side of my face, and then I'll use the Pro Blending Sponge by Inglot on the right side of my face. I'm going to use my Show Good Face by Soap & Glory. This is a great wee foundation. It's like a foundation and primer in one, and I'll actually use the sponges to apply and blend out the foundation. I often would apply the foundation with a brush and then blend out with the sponge, but just for today's video I'll use the sponge for everything. So we'll start off with the Beauty Blender. So what I do is pick up a little bit, I don't like to pick up too much of the foundation, and then start to bounce it over like the biggest part of my face, which of course would be my cheeks, like the biggest flat part, and I use the bottom of the sponge for that. So it's nice and light, and I think that's one of the things about this being so porous and so what's the word? The opposite to dense, whatever that is. You know, it is a really light sponge. So you can feel that when you are bouncing it on the face, and of course you just need to go very lightly. And this really does blend beautifully. I mean, it's quicker pretty much than using any brush really. Because most brushes you do need to work at a little bit just to make sure that there's absolutely no marks. And then I'm going to use this small little tip, get in around the nose, and then even though I don't generally apply foundation under the eye, I just will again for this and onto the lid. But if I do need concealer anywhere, I'll apply it using the sponge in a minute as well. So of course, as you would expect from the Beauty Blender, the makeup is like totally indetectable on the face, apart from the fact that I'm a little bit more even looking, and it's just perfected my skin. It doesn't look obvious at all. Now I'm going to move on to the Inglot sponge, which straight even, is heavier. It's a lot heavier. It's nowhere near as porous as this. Actually, I don't know if that's the right way of saying it. This looks more porous I mean, visually it looks more porous. This is heavier and it has absorbed so much more water that maybe that means that this is more porous actually when I think about it. I'm going to even try and squeeze out more if I can. Now the funny thing about this when it is wet is that it kind of feels like a stress ball, and it almost looks like a stress ball. You know, it will swell on the areas that are being, you know, the areas that are not in your hand when you're pressing it, which is really funny. So yeah, it's a bigger one first of all, of course, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'll pick up a little bit of foundation, start to bounce it. So this is nowhere near as light feeling on the skin as the Beauty Blender. It's leaving a little popping noise as I'm applying it. Kind of feels like I'm hitting my face a little bit more, whereas you didn't really get that sensation at all with Beauty Blender because it's so much lighter. So it seems to be doing the same job, as in visually I am seeing no marks on the face. It's just giving me that beautiful, like my own skin but better finish. But it's not as pleasant feeling on the skin when you are bouncing it up and down. And it feels more wet as well, which goes back to this absorbing so much more product. One thing I should note is that for some reason there's little white bits. I don't know, is it to do with maybe my foundation or my moisturizer, or even if it's maybe just dry skin. But there's tiny little white particles coming off on the top of this that I don't see on the Beauty Blender. So that's kind of interesting. Anyhow, I'm going to flip it around to the pointy area and do the same thing again. So, but essentially it is applying it the same way. It just doesn't feel as nice. And it feels, like I said, a lot wetter in my hand. This feels like it's actually wetting the foundation more as well. So maybe I shouldn't have soaked it. I mean, I'm just so used to just soaking this and then like squeezing it in a towel, and then it's perfect, you know, because a lot of the water comes out. It doesn't retain so much water, whereas this has retained so much more water. Maybe you're not supposed to soak it quite that much. Because I'm not sure if I've gotten quite the same coverage. Maybe marginally less, just because I think this is wetter. So now I'm just going to apply some under eye concealer. This is just my Maybelline Fit Me concealer. And then I'm going to blend with the sponge. So again, back in with the Beauty Blender. And I do have to say I much prefer how light this is on the face and also on my hands. It's just, it feels so much more comfortable. I'd say particularly for anyone who's sensitive to people being at their face, this would be much better to use on clients. And then I'm going to move on to the Pro Blender Sponge, and again it's just not as comfortable around the eye. I'm much more conscious of it putting pressure on my eye as I'm bouncing it up and down, and I'm not going any harder than I was with the Beauty Blender. So really you can't see much of a difference how it looks. It's all down to how it feels for me. And I'm just going to finish off now with a little bit of concealer. So I'm going to pop some here and here and anywhere I see a little bit of redness. Down my nose. Back into the Beauty Blender, and I'm just going to bounce that over the top. And since I've less to cover on this side, I'll just go over my nose as well. And then into the Inglot one for my right cheek. Okay, so that is the foundation on, and first of all, when you look at the sponge, there seems to be more product sitting on the top of this sponge, whereas it looks to have been absorbed maybe a little bit more by the Beauty Blender. I don't know, can you see there are little kind of streaks there with product just sitting on top, which I don't get here. So that's that. I do see tiny difference in my skin in that this is ever so slightly more natural than this. I mean, it's marginal, and I hope I'm not making it up, but I do feel like I've the tiniest bit more coverage on the Beauty Blender side than on this side, but that's been really nitpicky because it's very indetectable. Like, I would happily go out like this and I don't think anyone would notice the difference. So I'm going to finish off the rest of my makeup, clean these guys, and then I'll come back with my final thoughts. Okay, so obviously I have my makeup totally finished now, but you can see here before I put on, say, my contour and blusher and all that, I could still see with a little bit of powder over top, and I just used the NARS translucent crystal powder, which has very, very little coverage. I could see that there's definitely better coverage on the left side of my face, even under the eye. There's more discoloration, so obviously the coverage from the concealer wasn't as good. On this side, which is the side that I used the Inglot sponge under, there's more purple coming through, so definitely a little bit more coverage from this. So absolutely this wins. I mean, I think you're spoiled anyhow if you try the Beauty Blender before any of the rest of the sponges. And this guy retails for €12 here in Ireland, and this one, say when you look on the UK websites, it's £16 or so, and that would convert to €22. So you're talking €10 in the difference. But after a little test today and everything, I would still say that I think that I would choose the Beauty Blender over the Inglot one. It's not a terrible bad sponge by any means. I'm just spoiled with this one. This just feels so much more comfortable on the face, a little bit better coverage, and I just prefer to use it, and it didn't like soak up as much product or water either. So that's my little review on these two guys. Definitely will be repurchasing the Beauty Blender again, and this will just be a backup for whenever I need it. But I hope this was helpful, guys. If anyone has their own thoughts to share, let us know in the comments below, because that will always help everyone if they are thinking about getting either of these sponges. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'll see you all on Wednesday for my first Shib Stash video of this month. And in the meantime, just take care, and I'll see you all then. Slán, guys.